Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Azaz Gill. I am the Pennsylvania Policy Director for Business for America. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Business of America, we are a national nonpartisan organization, and we've been working in Pennsylvania since 2019. We've focused on engaging and mobilizing businesses across Pennsylvania to advocate for election reform, election security, and a revitalized focus on improving Pennsylvania's economy and business climate. Our webinar topic today is focused around the very important issue of pre-canvassing. Currently, the Pennsylvania Election Code only allows county boards of elections to begin pre-canvassing ballots as of 7 a.m. on election day. Allowing counties to pre-canvass mail-in and absentee ballots before 7 a.m. on election day would significantly expedite the availability of election results and avoid many of the issues Pennsylvania ran into in 2020. The County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, whose membership represents each of the 67 Pennsylvania counties' elected officials, has recommended that counties be allowed more, county boards of election be allowed more time to pre-canvass ballots. We have some folks here today, some very distinguished panelists here to talk about this issue. Our first panelist is State Representative Scott Conklin. Representative Conklin is the chair of the State Government Committee. And in addition to being a state rep, Representative Conklin is also a former county commissioner and a business owner with a large gift shop in his home county of Center County. So Rep. Conklin's going to can appreciate the concerns that Business for America has and provide us with a very unique viewpoint. Our next guest is City Commissioner Seth Bluestein out of Philadelphia. Seth was, apart from being my former boss, Seth was also a deputy commissioner for almost a decade under former city commissioner and current Pennsylvania Secretary of State Al Schmidt. He was appointed city commissioner last year and is one of the people responsible for administering elections in the largest county of the largest swing state in the country. So Seth will tell us exactly why a longer period of pre-canvassing is an important tool for counties to have in their toolkit. Last, but certainly not least, we have Lancaster County business owner Ethan Demme, who just recently wrote an op-ed on making elections more efficient for Lancaster Online, and he'll join us to share just why pre-canvassing makes common sense and give us a business perspective. So as we get started, I just want to tell everyone that we have 30 minutes on this. So in the interest of keeping things moving, I may sometimes cut someone off or I may try to jump in. It's not meant to offend anybody. I'm just trying to move the conversation along. Having said that, I am now going to move on to our first question. My first question is for Representative Conklin. So Representative Conklin, pre-canvassing is obviously a very important issue, but it's also sort of an issue mostly election boards have dealt with. So what was your impetus in introducing this bill?
Mine was really quite simple. I came from the county. I chaired the election board. I was there years ago when we implemented the voting machines, when we implemented the Shore system, when we went through everything we had to do to be able to make an election safe and fair. But the counties, under today's circumstances, things have changed. With the advent of being able to vote early, the mechanism wasn't in place to allow the counties to open them efficiently. In fact, today they have up to 3 days to start counting the early ballots. Some counties would do the 7 a.m., open them up, getting them ready to drop in the machine at 8 p.m. It all becomes very confusing for the average person. So the reason we put this bill forward was because of the folks, those 67 counties that run the election. They ask us for the one thing that they want most, and that's early canvassing. And the term early canvassing is, a lot of folks get very confused with it because they aren't sure what it means. All of that means is that the elections office is allowed to open up those ballots 14 days early in this bill and be able to get them ready to be put into the machines to be counted immediately on election day. That's all what this means. So you don't have some counties opening up the ballots at 7 a.m., putting in the machine at 8 a.m. You don't have some counties waiting 3 days later to do it. It takes away the whole conspiracy theory. It makes it so all the ballots are counted efficiently. They're put in the system. They go in. They came in first. We're able to count them first.
Thank you. So, Commissioner Bluestein, you are the one. So, as a city commissioner in Philadelphia, you deal with a lot of mail-in and a number of mail-in and absentee ballots. How does Representative Conklin's bill support your work or help you sort of administer elections in Philadelphia?
Thank you, Azaz. You know, ever since Act 77 was passed, counties across the Commonwealth from populous counties like Philadelphia and Allegheny, all the way through all 67, have spoken about the importance of being able to process the ballots that are received in advance of election day and getting them ready to be counted, and how important it is to make sure that things are run smoothly with the counting process to get that done. And what I like about Representative Conklin's bill is that it allows for pre-canvassing, and the period of pre-canvassing then allows for all the other aspects that are in the bill. Because this bill is broader than just allowing the county boards of election to count ballots, to process ballots and get them ready for counting in advance. It allows for better observation from authorized observers. It allows for a better process for curing for minor mistakes that voters make when they turn in those ballots, which allows then for greater confidence in the entire electoral process from an accessibility standpoint and from a security standpoint. And that's what will make elections in Pennsylvania so much better, in order to have results known on election night when the margins are not so close to require a recount.
Okay, thank you. So Representative Conklin, what hurdles do you foresee in getting your bill to Governor Shapiro's desk and for him to sign your bill?
I would like to be naive and say none, but we're also aware that we live in a political world. And as someone who really believes that the only thread we have in democracy is the election system, to see people use politics to undermine it is my fear. This bill is so simple, is so straightforward, that I'm afraid that individuals who want to use conspiracy theories for their own political gain will try to either add amendments into it or try to kill the bill before it gets to the governor's office, before it gets to the governor's desk. So presently, right now, and I shouldn't be so blunt, my only fear is politics and ideology. That's the only hurdle that I can see. And I'm going to go back to what the commissioner said. This bill, when I met with the County Commissioners Association a year ago, I asked them, out of all, there were 1,300, 1,800, all these different bill numbers that had a litany of things, but things that the elections boards did not want, some of them. I asked them, what is the one thing that you want? And they came quickly. I didn't even have to wait for a week for an answer. It was instant. We want to be able to do the pre-canvassing. We want to be able to stop the conspiracy theories. We want to be able to stop cable news stations from saying votes are coming in, because these folks that run the elections, they're honest. There's a Republican and Democrat at every precinct. There's a Republican and Democrat on the election board. There's Republican and Democrat when they're open, when they go into the machine. Nothing's hooked to the internet. All these conspiracy theories we can get rid of by just doing one thing. And that's allowing those folks who vote early to have their votes cast and counted immediately, rather than being waiting in 2 or 3 days, or some days even longer, for the counties to move or to count them for the move.
Thank you. That's very informative. Just a quick clarification. This is a question from the chat. So does your bill allow for just preparing ballots or also counting them? That's one of the questions we got in the chat.
14 days getting ready before election day.
Okay. So now, Ethan, I'm going to turn to you. Representative Conklin said that this is a common sense bill. So on the business side of things, let me ask you a question. Why do businesses, first off, care about this? And why is it common sense for them to care about it?
Well, there's two things from my perspective as a business owner, and when I've talked to other business owners. One is we need a well-functioning government. So a government that functions is good for business, and a government that functions on time and has a common set of rules allows businesses to thrive and try new things. The second thing that I think is important for businesses is we want to have employees that vote. Employees that vote are more engaged in your company, and they're also much more engaged in the local community. So we want to have employees that are invested in their local community, and voting gives them a voice, and we want that voice to be listened to. So it's just good for business and good for our communities to have more people voting. So the goal of most of this is we want everyone to vote, and we want those votes to be counted quickly and efficiently. The thing I appreciate about Representative Conklin's bill is he went to the folks who were doing the administering of elections and asked them what they needed. Some of the criticisms that I've heard of the previous election reform bills, while they were well-intentioned, they weren't listening to the county commissioners and the folks actually running elections. So it's just a good business best practice to ask for feedback from your users and say, what can we do? And then listen to that feedback and implement it. And I think Representative Conklin's bill does that. It listens to the counties and says, what do you need? They want pre-canvassing. Great, let's do it so that we can have well-run elections that are efficient, and so that people can trust those results when they come out that night.
Thank you. Follow-up question to you, Ethan, actually. So what sort of impact do you see these diverse practices across the state might be having on citizen confidence in the overall election system?
Well, when I talk to my, and I've been involved in politics a little, I'm a local township supervisor as well. And so if I like to tell people, if you've been part of an election and you've been in the room watching ballots being cast, you've interacted with judges of elections and minority inspectors of elections. So if you're an elected official and you've gone through this process, you know that the process works. We know that there's no major fraud in that election process. There's so many people, there's so many eyes on those ballots as they go through. But most people don't know that. When I talk to my employees, they expect those election results to be out that night. And when there's delays and there's lawsuits, it allows people to question, but it also allows, I would say, politicians who know better to also call it into question and come up with conspiracy theories. So if you're a politician who's gone through the process, you know that the elections are fair, but it gives you that little edge to politically benefit by calling into question those elections. And this tool in the local county's toolbox would allow them to get those ballots prepped so that they can be counted on election day very quickly, so we can get election results that night. And that lets the general populace trust those election results and get them quickly. And it's not something new. This is something that, the majority of states in this country do. And we can just catch up to the folks that are doing it well. Like Florida is a good example. They used to have poorly run elections. They reformed the system. They allow pre-canvassing. They call it something different, but Florida is now one of the gold standards of tabulating election results and getting them out that night. Pennsylvania should be able to copy them and other great states that have done this already.
Thank you. So this question is sort of for everyone. Ethan brought up the question of confidence in elections. So Representative Conklin and Commissioner Bluestein, what potential impact do you think a bill like this passing has on election integrity throughout the state or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I should say?
I'll let the commissioner go first on this one.
Yeah, well, as far as integrity is concerned, I think there's a few aspects of this bill that touch on that pretty directly. So pre-canvassing alone, let's just do a basic hypothetical scenario. If Philadelphia has 300,000 ballots and we have to try and open them and review them and get them prepared for counting in a single day, you need to have a lot of staff in a large space to do that. If you are able to spread that work out over 7 days, that means you have less activity on each day, which allows for more meaningful and close observation. So one of the complaints that came out in 2020 was that even though there were observers in the room every minute that we were processing ballots, that they couldn't see every single table. And I think by having pre-canvassing, you allow for a more meaningful observation in that way. That's one aspect of this. The other aspect is allowing for these ballots to be reviewed at a slower rate, which allows for greater accuracy. That also touches on the integrity of the election. And I don't think integrity and accessibility are two sides of a coin. I think they are related. And like I said at the beginning, you see that from the pre-canvassing aspect of this bill, where you're also allowing for greater observation and for greater curing of minor mistakes on the ballot envelopes. And we can do those two things at the same time to create trust in our elections from both sides of the aisle.
And the reason I wanted Seth to go first is that and I'm glad he brought up the population of Philadelphia. The reason the bill isn't done in such a way, and the reason we have it the way it is, 14 days pre-canvassing and these other parts of it, is that every county is different. We have counties in Pennsylvania that only 2,000 people, 2,500 people are going to vote this election cycle. We have counties such as Philadelphia that has almost 2 million people. And a huge population that's going to vote. And one of the reasons we did the bill the way it is, we wanted to put timelines and certain things in, but we still understand that the decision makers are your supervisors, your commissioners. These folks don't have time for politics. All they want is to have something in place to allow them to do their job, get it counted, and at the end of the election night, be able to walk away from that night not worrying that there's a 10,000 ballots sitting, that somebody's on the air saying that the election's being stolen from them. And what this bill does, it stops, and we've used the word conspiracy theories from elected officials, and we often joke that the people that are telling you that just won the election this year. They just won using this system, and there's been no widespread fraud. What we're trying to do is to allow those counties, as the commissioner said, to be able to not have to have so much personnel they can't get it done, to give them the opportunity to structure that to their county's use, but they still, as we keep going over, it's still documented, there's still people there, it's still bipartisan, everything is there. So at the end of the day, on election night, hopefully, unless it's going to be a recount, we have those results that people are asking for. And that's why, and that's what this bill does. And hopefully we're able to get it through, and we're able to give the tools that the counties need.
Thank you. Actually, specific question for you on the bill. Is there, I know you introduced this bill as last year's House Bill 2625. Do we have a specific number on what this bill is going to be this year?
Oh, I don't believe the numbers yet. I mean, if my executive director has gotten one in the last 48 hours, we'll put it out, but I do not believe that it's had a number given to it yet.
Okay. But last year, if you wanted to, you're just reintroducing House Bill 2625 from last year as well, if somebody wanted to look at the specifics of the bill, right?
Yes. And it's very simple. It won't take you long to read it. It's very straightforward, just a page or so long, and you'll be able to get the cross of it pretty quickly.
Excellent. Commissioner Schmidt, Commissioner Bluestein, do you have anything to add there?
I make that mistake sometimes myself. Yeah, I do. And I think Ethan touched on this in his answer a few minutes ago. One of the other aspects to election integrity is uniformity. And while I think Representative Conklin is correct that because of the diversity of counties, we need to have some flexibility on how we are managing our elections. But this bill also puts in clear in the law in black ink, that yes, we do have curing of mistakes. Yes, we do have everybody starting the actual canvassing after election day the next morning. And having that uniformity also will allow us to add trust and integrity to the process.
So, Representative Conklin, my next question is back to you. And Ethan and Commissioner Bluestein, feel free to chime in as well. How can the business community help you, Representative Conklin, on getting this bill through, and Commissioner Bluestein in general with elections? How can the business community sort of help you? And Ethan, you can also speak to some of that as well.
Well, just very quickly, Nick just texted me to let me know that the bill is being introduced today, so we should have a number soon. And Seth, I was with your old boss a couple days ago. He's still as articulate and magnificent that 2 days ago that he was in Philadelphia. Let's forget that Scott Conklin's doing it. Let's forget that it's a Democrat or Republican bill. Let's just look at what the bill is. The bill is something that makes it easier for the counties to be able to do their job. By doing so, it gets a lot of the water cooler talk, and we had to talk about this before. I've been in business for 35 years. We have, I was national director for the Builders Association. We have a satellite winery and all these things. And within our employees, we give them the opportunity to vote Republican, Democrat, however they want. But because of where we are located just outside of Penn State, we have a very diverse clientele. everything from the hyper partisan to the whoever, doesn't matter to me. But our problem has been, since the onset of these type of theories, the hyper partisan within our premises, because we're bricks and mortar, where it's nothing for us to have 700-800 people there in a day's time. There was some heated discussions among individuals because hats they had on, whether they supported this or the other, and saying that it was stolen or it wasn't stolen. As taking off my hat, and the reason I believe it helps businesses, it helps give you, in business, one thing we hate is the unknown. We hate unknown. We have to deal with it, but we hate it. I think this gives a template that it takes away a lot of those unknowns, that it's there and it doesn't spill over into my workplace.
Yeah, there's a great quote by William F. Buckley that I use a lot when I talk about this. He said, "Decent people should ignore politics, if only they could be confident that politics would ignore them." And I think traditionally business has tried to sort of stay out of the messy parts of politics. But the problem is the messy parts of politics are starting to pervade all areas of our society. And that's one of the problems. We've got polarization happening we've got news channels for each group. We've got social media platforms for each group. Everyone's gone to their own tribal sides, and we're missing that public square where we can have some good public dialogue and take down the temperature in the room. And we're seeing that hyper partisanship play out in state capitals around the country as well. And in Harrisburg, where it's a much more polarized environment than it was even 10 years ago. And so this is why I think it's important for more businesses to start to step up, because businesses are also a key institution in local communities. And we need those mediating institutions, whether they're businesses, civic organizations, nonprofits, groups like DFA. We need sort of those folks to step up and provide that structure to say, we need to take the temperature down. We need to disagree without being disagreeable. We need to work hard to find common solutions. And we need to reform things so that we can actually get back to some sense of normalcy. And what Representative Conklin said, we need to have an expectation of how the next election and the next election and the next election is going to happen. We need to know that, hey, people are going to vote. The votes are going to get counted. People are going to get elected. The people who lose call and concede. The norms of sort of the American democratic system, we're moving away from that, and it's very concerning, and it's a risk for everybody, but it's also a risk from the business community to say, if these norms can't be followed in politics, what other norms are people going to start ignoring? So we really need to have reforms like this one and others to help take the temperature down and let people get back to having a good, robust community where we can talk to each other and not yell at each other.
Just a final thing. So this all sounds like a lot of common sense to me. So what would you say to people who consider this to be a controversial issue? Like Representative Conklin, you're introducing this bill. What would you say to somebody who says, well, this isn't a nonpartisan issue. This is a democratic issue?
It sounds like I'm avoiding the question, but I'm going to answer the best I can. I always try to discern where the person's coming from. If it's coming from somebody who stops me on the street, I will try to explain the election process to them, how it works, how you get, how the integrity is there. When it's somebody who is one of my fellow elected officials who are elected under this system, who I know they're just spinning wheels for political sense or political nonsense, I always go back to scripture or go back to Mark Twain when they say, don't argue with fools because a passerby can't discern the difference. So, I mean, I don't mean that to be, flip, but if it's the public, I explain to them why I'm doing it, how it's done, all the safeguards that the counties do to make sure that the elections aren't stolen, how there is no evidence or widespread evidence that anything happened. So each individual, depending on where they come from, is how we try to explain what's going on the best.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting so many great literary quotes, but I will take it. That's a sign of a good discussion as far as I'm concerned. All right, so I want to thank all our panelists. I'm going to pivot over a bit to what Business for America is going to do. So as business leaders know, and Representative Conklin alluded to this earlier, like business leaders know that being unprepared is never a good thing. And Pennsylvania's failure to be prepared to announce election results the same day as election has contributed to voters questioning the reliability of the entire election system. This is all bad. This is something that Ethan brought up in his point as well. This is all bad news for our democracy and bad for the state's business climate as well. Fortunately, Representative Conklin has introduced a bill which could be a solution for us in advance for the 2024 election. So Chip York, who's our comms person, who's also running all this behind the scenes, a big thank you to him, is going to put some links in the chat for us. So we're, as business owners, we're going to have a business sign-on letter, and we're going to urge you to sign it. And we're also going to have a campaign around this entire issue of pre-canvassing, because we truly do believe that this has to be done before the 2024 election. So I'm going to let Chip put all those things, all those links in the chat. And I just want to thank you, Representative Conklin, Mr. Bluestein, and Ethan for joining us today as panelists and adding a lot of great viewpoints to this. It's important to have people from different backgrounds, different geographical standpoints come in and say just how important this issue is. I also want to give our profuse thanks to everyone who's attending this webinar today. You guys took time out, perhaps it was during lunch, to listen to this important issue, and I want to thank you all for it. Thank you so much for joining us today.